am Doc Di, and this is her perspective. That's better. Shake it off, shake it off. Listen, we're talking about the plight of the black woman today. I was so hyped about today, y'all. I mean, I couldn't hardly sleep because I wanted to have this conversation. This is such a powerful conversation that needs to be had. And it's not just me. I have 3 beautiful women. I know you see them already on the platform with me today. I am going to introduce them a little bit later, and they're going to tell us a little bit about themselves, because why they were chosen today, because they are strong, they are powerful, and they are dynamic. Come on, y'all, yes. So listen, we are streaming live, so I'm going to ask you to please share this live with everybody. Even though we're talking about black women, it is not just for black women. It's for anybody who's interested in our lives, right? So I want you to share, call your girlfriends, tell them to tune in, because we're going to have some real dialogue. We did not come today to be pretentious. We came to have a real conversation. That's another reason why they were chosen, because they are all very real. You don't ever have to guess what they are thinking. So why this topic, as we get ready? You all can take your seats. Why this topic? So I want to start here, because earlier this year, we had quite a few issues with African Americans losing their lives. You all know what I'm talking about, right? So with Ahmaud Arbery, unfortunate death, and I can say murder, and along with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor was in the middle. And I want you all to know that Ahmaud Arbery and George Taylor got a lot more media coverage than Breonna Taylor. Now, this is no shade or anything. It is just, it made me think, what does society think about black women? And it seemed like sometimes there are things that we are dealing with that we don't get as much recognition or media attention or a response that would bring a resolution to us. Am I right? I know I can't be the only one that bothered by that. So I wanted to do a show because I wanted to talk about it. This isn't about to just hash up problems and not have a resolution. We want to really come up with some resolutions. For those of you that are online watching, what we want you to do is put your questions or your comments in the comment section. We have a whole team that is monitoring, and they're going to get those questions to me, and you can get your questions asked right here live. Also, those that are in the audience, we have a handful in the audience. You also have the opportunity to come right up here to this microphone. I believe, is it Dr. Thea who's coordinating this? She's going to direct you, and you'll be able to ask your questions, and you can ask our panelists directly if you have a specific question for them. So because we have a little time to talk about a whole lot of stuff, we can't go on and on and on. So we do have a timekeeper who's going to help us make sure we move along, because we have quite a few topics to cover. So I think that's it for us to get started. I'm excited. I'm so crunk. I am. I think I'm extra excited because my husband is here too, and it's just extra special when your husband supports your dreams and your vision. So I am grateful to have him here with me. Y'all ready? I know y'all are. Okay, so I'm gonna take my seat, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. And let's start with this. Let the audience know who you are. I know each of you. I am privileged to know each and every one of them. So I'm going to call their names and ask them to just tell a little bit about themselves. And I might share a little something if they get all, modest. Because sometimes when we accomplish things and we do well, we have problems with sharing what we've done because of the judgment that often comes along with it. I know I'm telling the truth. Now, I don't need y'all to be quiet. I need y'all to talk back to us. This is a talk show, so I need y'all to talk back to us. So first, let's start with Erica picked up her water, so let's go to Cassandra. Let's go to Cassandra. There was a tactic. Oh, she said she got me. She let me drink the water so she don't call me first. Okay, let's go to Cassandra Joyner.
Good morning. Good morning.
What do you want the people to know about you?
Well, I'm a Southern Belle from Georgetown, South Carolina. I am the only girl, so I have three brothers and my mom and my father passed away, but I am from a strong background of great people. And again, I'm from a Southern state.
All right, so to tell you a little bit about Cassandra, I knew she wasn't going to do this. She has a bachelor's of science in biology and a minor in chemistry. So she's beautiful and smart, y'all. Yes, she's beautiful and smart. She is the department chair of the science department at her school. She's an after-school director, and something she did not put on her bio that I happen to know, she has a small catering business. So let me tell y'all, Carolina gal, you have not had, I'm telling you, a crab boil until you have had hers. Yes, that is the truth. And she's just like, oh God, please no. Yes, yes. So I am very, very honored to have you on the platform today.
Thank you.
So next we'll have, and we're going to go to the person who said it was a tactic. We're going to go to Erica Williams. What do you want the people to know about you?
I'm from Tallahassee, Florida. My voice is really loud. I don't want to cause any friction with anybody. I've had a loud voice ever since I was a child, so my mom told me I never really needed a microphone because it sounds like I have a built-in microphone. However, I'm from Tallahassee, Florida. I met Diane and her husband at Watson Temple. That's where I was born and raised in the church, Kojic Church, and I love these guys. I've been in law enforcement for 18 years. I started with the Lauderhill Police Department in 2002. I went to the first police academy after 9/11. I was sitting in class at TCC, and that's when the bombings happened, and we seen people jumping out of the buildings and all those things, and I was going for criminal justice. And I thought to myself, you know, I think I'm brave enough and strong enough to actually run in the building, sacrifice my life to save someone else.
Wow.
So I actually took the first law enforcement academy class after 9/11, graduated, and I started my law enforcement career with Lauderhill Police Department in 2002. I started on road patrol, worked my way to the school resource officer, community policing. I also became a detective. I worked my way through the ranks of detective from property crimes up to major crimes. I left as a violent crimes detective, which is basically like robberies, homicides, things of that nature. So if you're blessed to become a major crimes detective, it's an honor to be able to investigate a homicide, because that's basically the worst thing that someone can do is take another person's life. I left Lauderhill in 2012, moved back to Tallahassee because my dad had dementia and my family was having a rough time dealing with it. I moved back, I resigned and moved back after almost 10 years, and I got on with the Inspector General's office for Florida Department of Corrections. I wanted to keep doing investigations, and that's exactly what the Inspector General's office do. We do investigations inside the prisons. And basically now I'm assigned to special investigations, so I actually investigate officers that commit crimes. So that's a very difficult task. It's not very many black female officers in the Inspector General's office, and even few doing what I do now. I also am a part of the FBI gang task force, violent gang task force, and and I'm the only black when it comes to that particular task force. So the only reason why I stayed after moving back to Fort Lauderdale in 2015 is because I feel like my position was necessary. There's not many people look like me, and unfortunately incarcerated, everybody looks like me. So when you're inside the prison, it's completely opposite than out here in the world. It's a lot of minorities, it's all minority, very few Asians, very few whites. You know, things of that nature. So I thought my position was necessary just to make sure that even though you're an inmate and you're in prison, crimes still happen, unfortunately, and we don't send people to prison to be victimized again. So that's why I actually stayed, because I was actually qualified to, you know, once I moved back, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get back into the law enforcement world, but God hasn't led me to leave yet, so I'm still there.
Amen. Oh, come on, y'all. Did y'all hear this? The woman is doing it. And yes, I've had the privilege to know her since she was a little girl. I've had that honor, and she has grown into a beautiful woman.
Thank you.
So I am so excited. Last, certainly not least, is Marshonda Austin Cheatham.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. I am a natural-born educator. I've been with the Broward County school system for over 25 years now. I'm a wife, a mother. My biggest charge and my biggest blessing is being a Christian. I am a guidance counselor, now turned into a family counselor, which means I like to listen. I am the founder of Pumps and Pearls, and I'm just going to simply say this. The motto is always be a pearl that pumps another woman up, because that's what I do. That's my daily charge, and I'm glad to be here. I met Diane through someone else, and God sends people. I truly believe that. Her spirit since that time, anytime I come in contact with her, she's just been a blessing. And I appreciate you inviting me today.
Oh, no tears. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be connected to you. One more thing she didn't mention, she is the co-lead of Brown Girls, a mentorship program for female students at Florida Memorial. And I think it's important to highlight that, because we do have to pour back into our community. So often we can get what we get, whatever that is, certifications or whatever, and forget to go back and to pour into those who are behind us. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. All right, y'all, loosen up a little bit. Now you know who the panelists are. Now you know why they are here to share such a courageous conversation. So we want to start here. We want to talk about the reality of being a black woman in America. Now, I did quite a bit of research because, yes, I'm a black woman, but I don't represent all black women, okay? So, y'all, we're going to have this dialogue. But I found so much stuff out until I could not wait to share. So let's start here with what's trending today. Now, in America, there's been an unmistakable rise in the power of black women. Can we all agree? Yeah, you see black women on the forefront. You see them in magazines, politics, almost everything. But there's some things we don't know. There's a quote I want to start. Black women consistently work for a better country, but our country is not working for them. And that quote came from the Washington Post in 2017. What does that mean? Black women have the highest rates for voting. Okay, that's number one. They've made significant improvement with college degrees. There's been a huge improvement in the numbers of black-owned businesses by women now. But we are still, underrepresented in elective office. We earn less than white men and white women, and are twice as likely as white women to be incarcerated. That's where I want us to start, because it's so easy to get caught up in what it looks like. Media shows us what they want to show us, right? And so if we see this, it will give us the idea that we're doing great, and we are doing better. We're doing better, but we are nowhere where we need to be. Black women's contributions are undervalued and often undercompensated. Do you all agree? Yeah. Do you all agree? Yeah, you're like, absolutely. Okay, so jump in.
Like you said, you see a lot of black women, the head of agency.
Use that, because they can't hear you online. We can hear you in here, but they can't hear you.
So you see a lot of black women, the head of like police agencies. But this is what the issue is. You see the black female as the police chief, but what does her command staff look like? Probably not like her. So does she really have a voice? Is she really running that agency? So that's my issue with it. Even with commissioners and, other people that are the face of the agency, is that black female really running that agency? That's what we need to find out.
That's a good point. That is a good point, because I do know one of a police chief, and her agency does not look anything like her. That is something to really think about, because you really can't make a lot of change if the issues that your people deal with are not put on the forefront and people in authority to do something about it?
Because they'll see, like, the city of Fort Lauderdale, the city of Lauderdale, a lot of black officers in road patrol. So the people you come in contact with, if something happens in the mall, if something happens at the bus stop, they're black or they're minorities, Hispanics, they look like the city. But when it comes to the command staff, the people that makes decisions, the people that decide if that person gets disciplined for being excessive or, you know, whatever the situation is, a lot of times those are the white males. That's not, you know, it doesn't represent the actual city.
And, you know, and I think, yes, that is worthy of applause right there. I think that's probably across the board. Yeah, that's probably not just with law enforcement. That's probably every entity.
As well as in education. When we look at the people that's making rules and regulations for our kids, they don't look like us. So that's the same across, like you said, across the board. It's also in education. For me, when Pastor Di said about, Dr. Diane, said about being department chair, one of the things was I was the first one in my school. Everybody else, to be honest, there's only 7 of us. So the dynamics don't really look like when we nurturing the kids and making rules and consequences and teaching, the people that we're teaching look like us, but the people that's making the rules about what's going to happen as a result of what they did don't look like them. Absolutely. So that's across the board. I agree.
That's where the problem is.
Yeah, I agree. When I worked for the school board here, I went to an alternative school. I was assigned to an alternative school that had about 500 kids. Well, 98% of them were African American, but the staff, there were 5 of us on this whole campus. And so the decision making, you're absolutely right. Who would know what to do culturally? I mean, it doesn't mean that everybody has to be black and all black people understand. That's not what we're saying. We're saying to be sensitive enough to recognize what the real issues and concerns are so that we know what to even put on the table.
And I can agree with that, especially in that field, in working as a counselor, and then we have like the behavior team and everything. If you don't know the dynamics of a child that comes from where I come from, and it makes a barrier when you're trying to educate, trying to relate, and trying to work with their behavioral and counseling needs when you don't understand, because you're starting a day with your way. This child could have not had breakfast. This child could have been going through certain situations before they even get to school, and then you come in with your mindset and your demeanor, and it's gonna definitely be a clash. And then it's like, Johnny has a behavior problem. No, Johnny's hungry. You know, and that's something that you don't understand. So it does have to come.
Or Johnny saw his mom beat up last night. You know, there are a whole lot of other intricate details that you must be sensitive about. So I agree. Thank you so much for getting that started. So you got the ground rolling here. Let's start with stereotypes. Yes, let's start there. Because there are so many stereotypes, and just for audience sake, for the audience online, a stereotype is defined as a mental picture that is held in common by members of a group that represents an oversimplified opinion or prejudiced attitude or uncritical judgment toward people. Okay, that's what a stereotype is. So with that, there are lots of stereotypes for black women. And I know there is one that everybody's probably going to say. So I'm going to ask my team here, what is the first stereotype you've heard about black women?
Angry.
You agree? Yeah. You agree? Do you agree, audience? Angry. Have you ever heard it said about you?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Talk to me.
I am considered the mean girl at work, right? And I just don't understand that, because I feel like you would never call a male a mean guy, you know? So I feel like I'm just direct. And I learned that because being a law enforcement officer in the city of Lauderhill, I had to learn to be strict, direct, tell someone what I need them to do, not play around and go on scene and I'm smiling and I'm playing, because they would take you as a joke. And unfortunately, you know, I came from Tallahassee where you get out your police car and they're, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, you know, we called the police and this is what happened. Well, when I moved down to Fort Lauderdale, it was a whole people would tell you, get out my house. I ain't called the police, you know, things like that. And it was shocking to me. My mom actually would tell me multiple times, you need to come from down there with them crazy people, you know. And so it actually made me into this tough person, this no-nonsense person. But I'm like that with everybody. I'm like that with inmates. I'm like that with people on the street. I'm like that with officers when they do things wrong. Because you have to be firm and concise and, you know, so that you don't have to repeat yourself. Because if not, you will lose control of your scene. They will be running you, and pretty much they're the police, and, you know, it's totally opposite. So you have to be that way, and it's sad. But like I said, when you come from a place like Tallahassee where the Capitol is and you pull up in your police car, everybody's, you know, pretty much cooperating with what you're asking them to do. South Florida is a completely different situation down here. And so people feel like, you know, the police is rude or, you know, things of that nature. But I'm like, when I grew up, my mom said, if the police stop you, you have your license, registration, insurance. You say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And then if something happens, you call me and you let me know. We go to the police station and we file a complaint. But now, because of social media, everything is completely different. Everybody is hostile, not just the people on the street, but also, you know, police, because they're feeding off the energy, or we see stuff that, you know, in the social media as well. And it's a sad situation, but we've got to change this, because at the end of the day, we all have to live here together. You know, that's why, you know, the new vice president and president that's running, we've got to lean towards them, because they're trying to make peace. You know, they're trying to make harmony. They're trying to make reform. So that's just my take on it.
I'm feeling that plug, though.
I think a lot of times they confuse our firmness with being angry. I think all we're just merely trying to say is we are here, we're supposed to be here, and we're going to do what we need to do. And they confuse that with being angry. I can remember when I started in education, I have a lot of facial expressions. So it was, you wear your emotions on your sleeves. Why you doing this? Why you doing that? Why you looking like that? No, I'm here. I'm supposed to be here. I work to be here, and I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be respected. So I think a lot of times they confuse that with, oh, she's angry, she's unsatisfied, she's unhappy or arrogant. But you are just confident, and you are firm in the belief that God put you here because you are supposed to be here.
I've also been called angry, but I rephrase that with, I am passionate about what I'm speaking about. Because in so many instances, we have to, like she said, show our place, show that we are here, and what we believe in or what we're standing for is true. And at the same time, we have so many people that will disrespect our position, disrespect our voice, and then it turns into, oh, they're angry. No, we're not angry. We're passionate about what we're doing. So I wouldn't say that we're angry. We're passionate. And yes, just like now, I'm using my hands. They look at how we speak. We're firm. One of the teachers, one of the professors I had, Dr. Honoro, in college, she taught botany, but she was African. And when she spoke, it was doo-doo, 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 doo-doo. That's how she's taught, how she spoke. And with her family, that's how she spoke. And they, the other professors looked at it as, whoa. But that's how they spoke in their tradition, their culture. It wasn't that she was angry or aggressive. That's just how, her behavior, her culture. So I would say, when they say that we're angry, change that to, no, I'm passionate about what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, of course, I have definitely encountered that. I have found myself asking, why do you think that? Why do you say I'm angry? I've been told my feelings on my sleeve, all types of things. But what I realize is that much of our behavior is cultural. It's exactly what you said. It is the way we communicate. It is just who we are. It's in our DNA. It is in no way angry. But because it is different, that's the way it is identified, that we are angry. So I did research this. I had to, y'all, because I wanted to know, where did this thought come from? And according to Forbes magazine, I don't know, y'all are kind of young, so you might not know Amos and Andy. I remember my mom talking about a show, Amos and Andy, 1950 radio show that depicted black women as sassy and domineering. And that's where that sassy, attitudinal, bad temper mindset came from, that identity of black women. That's what, according to Forbes. So I was thinking, I was like, oh, wow. So how many years later, we're still dealing with the same mindset? And it even trickles down to everyday people like Serena Williams. When she's playing tennis and the way she responds, she's very passionate when she plays, but the headline said that she's an angry woman. Right. And that even the sounds that she makes when she hits the ball, that, oh, maybe that should be considered distracting. You're like, are you serious? Yeah, I'm so serious. And of course, Michelle Obama. Come on, y'all. Yes. Why? Because she's a strong black woman. So anytime you make the decision that I'm going to speak up for what I rightfully believe in and what belongs to me, then it's considered aggressive or overly assertive, that it's not necessary. So that is something I definitely wanted to bring up. Yes?
I'm glad you brought up Michelle Obama, because one of the things they talked about with her was after she gave her first interview, people came in to kind of soften her because they felt like when she spoke, she was too aggressive in her mannerisms. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because they look at, that person, that your position says that you need to soften that a little bit. So that's, wow.
I think also because in a lot of other cultures, women don't speak out. It's their culture. The male is the person, the husband is the person that speaks in front, in public and stuff like that, and we're just not like that. So I think, that's where a lot of people get that from also, because when I went to Dubai and when you travel outside the country, you start to see like the women, you don't even see women walking around. You're like, where are the women in this country? But they're home, and they're home, or you'll see them like at a resort or something like that working, but you just don't see them out and about like our culture. So when we speak out, it's shocking to them because, like I said, that just doesn't happen in their culture.
That's an excellent point. That is something that I think we all have to consider, and they have to consider also. Okay, so let me introduce one more. I knew angry was going to come up, but I want to introduce something else that I didn't realize was as prominent, but through my research I did figure out that black women are considered sexual beings and that we are innately promiscuous. Yeah, and that kind of shocked me that people who are non-black feel that way about us. And historically, white women were portrayed models of self-respect, self-control, modesty, and sexually purity. And black women were considered not. We'll just say it like that. But we gain the depiction, black women, as Jezebels. Please speak on it.
It probably went back to when we were slaves and they
yes.
made us
Yes.
in that image that they wanted us to be.
Yes.
That's where it all started.
Yes.
It's what society made us to be. That's not what we chose to be. It's the control that they took over us when they took our bodies and did what they wanted to do when master said this and that. So that's something that they probably carried down in their beliefs when it's totally opposite.
That is the truth. I agree with you. I agree. And in research, that is exactly what happened. But that mindset still, resonates today when they look at black women, that we're overly sexual. And that we, when they said innately promiscuous, I was like, wait, what?
And that's one of the reasons why when we think of black women in the movement for women's rights, they went to discuss, they were upset with how black women were being treated, the sexual abuse, being raped, and nothing was done about it. So you're absolutely correct.
Well, as I was preparing for this event, I read the same thing. So, we have like minds. But I was shocked as well when I read that, and it specifically said that white men look at us as sexual beings, you know, and that we're sexually aggressive and things like that. And I was like, wow. I was shocked to read that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't realize that.
I didn't. Did you guys realize that? You know, that really blew my mind. It's amazing because as we discussed the other things that black women deal with, when you start putting all this together, then it starts making sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because white women are often offended by us, and they misread us. And when you think about things like this, you're like, I don't want your husband, your man, or whatever. But if that's your mindset,
Intimidated in the workplace.
you can put your comments in the comment section. I told you it's going to get heavy because I've dealt with that. And I'm just like, well, what's the problem? But that's the way they perceive you. Sometimes it's not what you're doing at all. It is perception. And that's the bottom line, okay? So we're going to move on a little bit. I don't know. I do not have my phone so they can give me the questions. So I don't know if you guys are sending me questions or not. So if you do, you need to get that to me. Yes? Okay, so I need to get someone to bring me that phone so that I can get those questions, please. I want to make sure we get there. We're going to go to topic number 2. Let's talk about black women in the struggle for equity, okay? This is the quote: the more success you have, the more threatening you appear. What do you think? I need some feedback on that.
I agree that is how society views us, but they don't understand that we've had to kick down the door quite a few times. We've always had to go above and beyond to get where we are. So as I stated before, it's not like they should view us as a threat, because in our trying to work to get where we are, we're standing firm. We're taking our place because it's not given to us. We have to take it. So it may come off that we have like a little air about us, but society puts that on us because of the struggle that we have to go through. Instead of like a regular male or a regular person, it's easy sometimes. It's easier. This is how this is going to be for them. No questions asked. But for the woman, especially the African-American woman, there's a struggle there. So when we get to where we are very proud. We're a very proud culture. And it displays in our countenance. And some people take that as a threat or whatever. But I take that as you need to be confident in yours, because I'm surely confident in mine, and I made my way here. So I see them feeling that way, but it's not true, because we're just trying to get where we are and maintain where we are. And, I don't think that should pose a threat to anyone.
You want to respond to that?
I think they see us as a threat because they recognize who we really are. I take it on the other end of that it's threatening to them because they recognize that this person is strong, they're powerful, they're probably smarter than me, they're more creative than I am. So that's why they're threatening. They feel that, hey, this person can take my position or move up beyond me. So I see the threat on the other end. They're insecure. They recognize who we truly are.
I think they're threatened because when I go to the building in Miramar, it's a $1 billion building, right? And it's intimidating because everybody you see in there look like somebody important. I mean, all the way to the person answering the phone, and you have to go through 3 or 4 checkpoints just to get in the building. Wow. So every time I come there, I make sure, my hair is in place, my makeup is done, my outfit is to the 9, because I want to, not just feel like I'm important, but I want them to see me just as important. And if you feel threatened, you feel threatened, but at the end of the day, I deserve a seat at the table, and I'm going to demand my respect.
All right now. All right. Okay. Let me introduce this term. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this before, because we're shifting the conversation a little bit. Have you ever heard of weathering? Has anybody ever heard of weathering when it comes to African American? No. Okay. Me either. I'd never heard this term before, but I'm going to tell you what weathering is, and then we can get into this dialogue. Weathering is described how constant stress of racism leads to premature biological aging and poor health outcomes for Black people. It leads to disproportionately high death rates, chronic conditions such as heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and cancers. And all of this is because of the constant stress of racism. This is a real diagnosis, by the way. And it says that the body is always trying to maintain balance. And this term is called allostasis. And it's the buffering process of trying to respond to stress. So, as a result, in the Black community, we have all of these other medical issues because of the constant dealings of racism and buffering, not knowing if it's going to affect you or how it's going to affect you. And so when I read that, it says that we are tired of constantly dealing with the psychological and the physiological effects of trauma. And that's something that I wanted to bring to the table because, yes, we can march and we can protest, but the physiological effects of what's going on in your head is a whole nother level, that it causes an increase in heart disease, you know, and other things, and blood pressure, high blood pressure. So I wanted to bring that up because I think we need to look at it holistically, not just trying to change policies about our rights, but also health. We have serious health issues in the Black community, especially Black women. I mean, don't even mention the mortality rates for women that have babies are how disproportionately higher to every other race. But the health issues that we deal with, I think, need to be put on the forefront, especially women. One of the things I read is that as a result of, and I'm going to talk about this, so if y'all want to email me, my email is on my website. My email is on the live. You'll be able to do that. But I'm going to talk about Obamacare because people bring it out, but they say negative things, and some people say, no, it's great. I want to bring some numbers out because this goes with the health issue. As a result of what they would call Obamacare or ACA, the Affordable Care Act, 16.5% of non-elderly Black women are without health insurance due to the rising cost of health insurance. I do want us to talk about that because sometimes we see something that's great, but it's affecting something else negatively on the other side. So I do want us to have that conversation today. When I read those numbers, 16.5 women who are not elderly can't afford to buy health insurance, okay, because they have raised the rates. What does this mean? They can't afford ACA either. You make too much, right? So you're in between. I want us to talk about government and legislation that can help that whole generation of people, because we're talking about single moms, right? A lot of single moms, people that are breadwinners that have to bring the insurance in for their families. And so this is the situation that they're in. I want somebody to respond to those numbers and just the idea of weathering around, having to deal with that and then not having any insurance. Y'all thinking deep? That's heavy. It is.
Well, I'll start with the weathering. I think that is true because when you think about the Black woman or the Black woman that's dealing with the family, if they are working, they're going to school, they have kids, sometimes they don't have time to go to the doctor or whatever the case may be because they're so busy doing other things, and it does affect them. And if we think about the racism part of it, they're not being paid as much. They go to the job every day. They're not being paid as much as other people. So then you have that wearing on their bodies. So it does affect them because they're not equally proportioned with other individuals. Then you have the Black woman that may have sons. Now they have to think about their sons going out every day, working, driving. They have to deal with, You know, will my son make it home today, or will my husband make it home today? So I think all of those different things does affect the female. And I know for me, sometimes we neglect ourselves to make sure that other people are prepared. So the stress level, yes, goes up. So that's what I want to speak on, the weathering part.
I would say, and not even recognizing you're going through that, you know. And even when you do have a job and you need to go to the emergency room because, you know, you feel like something's wrong with your stomach or your head or whatever, but you can't afford it because it's $100 copay when you go to the emergency room, or you can't afford the medications even if you get a prescription for it. So a lot of times it's not so much as that you may not have the insurance, but you have to consider, can I put food on the table, or can I go get this Motrin and lay down and hopefully it'll go away? Right. So you kind of self-diagnosing yourself, and then later on, a couple of years later, you realize you had cancer, you had a serious problem that you probably could have gotten taken care of, but because you neglected yourself, now you have a bigger issue, you know? So even, like I said, if you work for the state, still don't make that much money. You have to literally say, okay, am I going to put food on the table? Am I going to buy my kids school clothes? Or do I need to take care of this lump I got that I need removed that's going to cost me, you know, $400 aside from what insurance is going to pay? So I think a lot of times as black people, we self-diagnose ourselves. We want to Google something and put something on us. In all actuality, you could just go to the doctor and get it taken care of. But, you know, we counting our pennies. We're counting every dime we have, you know, for a rainy day.
Not just we count our pennies, because I'm a WebMD person myself. I WebMD it all the way out before I go pay that copay. That's what I do. It is like, it's very expensive. And I've known, like, even in the education field, some people have left the job of being an educator because they had children, and the insurance alone was so much to go and get something else, because the insurance would take up half of their check, you know. So it is, but as just an African-American woman with the weathering, it's always that we put everything else before we put us. So we'll take the stress, we'll take the this, but if somebody else in the household has an issue, we're trying to direct them to go do this, but we can feel it all along and not do what we need to do. But it does have to do with the copay, the life, just life itself, and the stressors that we do go through. So I can see that is going on with us. It's happening with us. It's real.
Yeah. Healthcare is expensive all the way around anyway. So, and not necessarily a problem with ACA. I just think when ACA was implemented in 2010, there was no program that would work with the people in between, right, and something to prevent insurance companies from making their prices skyrocket, you know, for skyrocketing their prices. So that was the end result, that I think that's their way of getting back at them for implementing this health program.
Before I became an educator, I was in the pharmacy, and there has to be something. The people that we put in office actually have to do something with these insurance companies, because I would see people come, like she said, that can't afford for 5 pills, and they would piecemeal. They'll come one day and buy 1, come another day and buy 2, that kind of thing. So they would put their health on the line. So for whoever we decide to vote for, we have to think about who is lobbying for us and these insurance companies, because it's a $1 billion business. And think about, yes, we pay insurance, and then we don't even go to the doctor or the hospital, and they're getting our money anyway. Right. So we definitely, for whoever you decide to vote for, think about the people that's lobbying and get some of these insurance companies to cut these prices.
That is the truth. You mentioned something earlier that I want to drop a little something right here. You talked about making a choice, all the things that black women have to deal with, okay? So yes, we often take care of our families and so forth. 80% of black mothers are breadwinners. 80% are breadwinners, okay? But they have responsibilities such as taking care of an elderly parent, a person with disability, or a young child, and balance that with work. That is something that black women, so if they're angry, that's probably why. That's a lot for one person to deal with. I watched my mother take care of both her parents, and because my dad and we all were there, we all took turns, so she didn't have to deal with it by herself. But the stress of taking care of a parent and your spouse and your children and work, come on, that's a lot. And so I think people have this, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, because we are strong, but we're not superhuman, okay? And I think people, have the perception that black women, okay, y'all strong, you can handle anything. Yes, we are strong because we had to be. That's the truth. We had to be strong. But that doesn't mean we're superhuman, and this stuff still takes a toll, which is where the weathering comes in. Because you deal with this, and you do have to make that decision. I'm not going to put my child's life in jeopardy. If my child is hungry, I'm going to feed my child first, and I'll take care of my body later, not thinking that I might not be here later. Come on, y'all, talk to me. Those are choices that black women have to make every single day. Even educated women still struggle financially. So this is not just, okay, that's uneducated. No, they still struggle financially. And this is a decision that we all have to make. That family care, let's talk about that quickly, because in the black community, you take care of your family. Now, we need to talk about that. And you're like, I don't go put, I can't afford to bring Mimi in to take care of my mother, my father, a live-in nanny. We don't do that. So I want you to speak to that, because it's not that we have a choice. We do what we have to do. So how do you do that and still take care of yourself? Because somebody said self-care. Okay.
I can actually relate to that because my mom took care of my grandmother for 8 years. She moved into my grandmother's house and still had to take care of her house, because some people think, oh, your mom lives at your, no, my mom has her own house. We grew up somewhere else. And it got down to the point where my mom says, you know what, I'm not gonna put mama in a home, because I feel that if I do that, she'll dwindle quicker. So she moved in. My mom was still teaching. My mom still had to come home every day and cook, clean, that type of thing, because my grandmother had too much income to get the welfare aid to come in every day. So sometimes when my mom would want respite, I remember one year my mom came to visit me, and I saw how much she aged from taking care of my grandmother. Now, granted, and I know some of my family members watching online, my mom has siblings. But at that time, my father had passed away, so the rest of them are married. So they are not coming to clean up and do all of that other stuff. They'll come and sit. And I remember sometimes my brother when he would come back from military off of duty, he'll come home or whatever. And my mom would come in from the day and say, y'all, please just give me 20 minutes. And she'll take a power nap and up cooking, doing whatever she needs to do. But at the same time, taking away from herself, because then she has to go and deal with juniors and seniors and freshmen the next day, like nothing at home is different. So I see the both sides, because again, like I said, my grandmother, because of the income of retirement and different things, where my mom couldn't afford, because then it will dwindle all of the reserve that they have. Because staying in respite, if they would have to put my grandmother in respite just for my mom to have relief, thousands of dollars. 5 days could be thousands of dollars, and then just to get relief. So then it's like, do I pay this $20,000 for 10 days? Or take it, just deal with it. So yes, I see that side of it, and sometimes it's not just the other people that think we're strong, it's the people that's connected to us that think that we're superwoman or superhuman, and they don't. I think sometimes we need to embrace and acknowledge, hey, I know you're struggling. I know you can't do this. I know you need some help. I think we also need to be accountable for other people and say, hey, let me help you. Because that'll help with some of the self-care and say, okay, ooh, I feel good that I can take this break.
Wow. That's true. You want to speak on that?
I'm just going to give a little bit to piggyback off what you said, because I'm an only child from an only child. And my mom is taking care of my 91-year-old grandmother, which, thank God, my grandmother gets around. But my mom also has a need to take care of me, my daughter, and my husband. So listening to you, if you're watching Mama, I appreciate you. But one of the things that I did do, because after she retired, my grandmother got sick. So God spared us in that way, that she has the time, but she never had taken care of herself. So over the last 2 years, I forced her to go to the doctor. Go get this test, go get this test, go do this. Take some time for yourself. And she has, and I'm thankful for that, because like you said, my grandmother made too much. And we can't get anything. I'm like, people like, oh, you can get help. No. When we call, when we get on websites, no, we cannot get it. She, it's just unfortunate. She worked hard. She had a good life. And now I feel like sometimes we're being punished, in the time that we really need the help and the assistance. But like you were saying, you have to force them to take care of themselves, because we are natural born as African-American women caretakers, and we get lost in that because it's our mom, it's our dad. But in that, if you're a child of someone that's doing that, just tell them to take a moment and just take care of themselves.
Yeah, culturally, that's what we're raised to do. You're told you take care of your family. And so sometimes it can be too much. You can't handle it yourself, and it's almost like, in the culture, if I'm going to be honest and say this, if you don't take care of your family, it's like shame on you. Yeah. It's like shame on you. But they're not going to come help you, though. They're not going to come help you, but they definitely would judge you. So, yeah. So I wanted to bring that out, because that is a weight. And I know black men, they help or they work, but most of it's black women that are the caretakers. Okay, let's shift again. Our time is going so fast. I'm enjoying this conversation. Let's talk about black women and police brutality. So I want to read this. There's a little section that I took out of an article that I just want to read, and I just want to see your response to it, okay? And it's an article from Forbes magazine, June 2020, and it's what I want white people to know. And what it says is, when white people say they don't see color, it's an insult, because it is my color that makes people question why I'm in the spaces I'm in, not my character, not my intellect. Once the rioting and protest are all over, you all get to put your signs down and go back to your regularly scheduled program. You have the ability to choose to stay active or completely ignore it. We don't get that choice. It is an everyday fight. Y'all have been tired for what? A few weeks? Maybe a couple of months. I've been tired my whole life. So I wanted to know what's going through you. When I read that, you should read the entire article. And it was based on after the murder of George Floyd, that people were, non-black people, really didn't know what to say. And so they started to just say stuff like, I don't see color, we all can get along, that kind of stuff. And so there was an article written about, dear white people, this is what we need you to know. Please don't ever say, I don't see color. Because there's no way in the world you don't see my color. You do see my color. And to say it is an insult. But from there, it goes back to the weathering, the fight, the constant fight, that you do get a choice to pick up a cause and say, I'm going to protest this or not. We don't get to protest being black. Every day I get in that car, I'm black. Every day I go to the store, I'm black. I don't wake up and say, today I think I'm going to make the decision to not be black. And for us, which is what we're talking about today, is black women are double minorities, because we are black and we're female. So we deal with it from both angles. I want to hear from one or two of you about what I just read. What are your thoughts with that, especially as it pertains to police brutality? Because I know Erica got something to say about this.
I'll let somebody go first.
That was deep. I do think that it's just like one of those cliches, like if someone passes away and somebody say, I know how you feeling, and they don't, they don't know what you're going through. So sometimes we have to be careful of the words that we say as they're probably trying to do, let us know that, they're there for us, but you still have to be careful because you haven't walked in my shoes. So you don't understand how I go through my daily life. You don't understand anything about the slavery or anything, the brutality that my ancestors before me have gone through. So just be there. Sometimes silence is golden. I don't need you to say anything. Just stand in your standpoint, and if I know that you're there for me, because I do have some friends of the other color that have tried to come on strong, and I didn't want to be disrespectful, but I did say to them, this is a whole nother war, a whole nother war. Right. And I appreciate you being there, but I don't need the commentary because this is a whole nother war. So that's what I have to add for that.
I just want to say something briefly. I think if they know the difference between sympathy and empathy, they can actually have, I think I'm more appreciative of what they have to say, or when they ask a question, hey, Cassandra, what do you think about this, or what can I do? When they're being empathetic, that's when I can rock with them. If they're telling me that, like you said, and that cliche is, oh, I understand what you're going through. No, you don't. I just told my administrator and a guidance counselor the other day, because one of my administrators is a part of the other community, and so they have their own fight, okay? So they have their own fight, and we always have conversations back and forth. And I said, you just have no idea what it is to be a black woman. And she even said, Joyner, I empathize, because she can't recognize being a black woman. She can recognize being a white woman and having the other orientation or whatever, and what they have to deal with, but she cannot understand being a black woman and all the different things that we have to go through. And going back to the prior conversations of constantly having to fight for where we are. Constantly, every day, we're in a fight for something. So knowing the difference between sympathy and empathy.
Situation, the Breonna Taylor situation, every situation is different, and we have to realize that and listen to all the facts and all of the reasons why a situation happened, and then educate ourselves to know what we can do and what we cannot do as citizens. Right. But the issue with black women is we take on everybody's emotion, everybody's hurt, everybody's pain. So we're in fear a lot of times when we're dealing with the police, because you might have had a son that was abused by the police, right? You might have an uncle that was beat up by the police. So when you're stopped by the police, you're almost already like, what we finna do? Yeah. Because I'm already upset. Right. But what you don't know is I'm a black officer and I have the same fears. Right. When I'm outside of my element, when I'm not a police officer, I'm not in uniform, I'm not in my unmarked car, I'm not afraid. And I still go back to what my mom taught me, I'm respectful, but at the same time, I want to know how you're going to treat me, because I know if you treat me a certain type of way, that's how you treat people on the street. Right. And I'm going to file a complaint, and I'm going to call your supervisor. I had a situation in Hollandale when I was looking for an address, and I was in my unmarked car, and yes, the tents are very dark, and if you run my tag, it comes back to nothing, like it's stolen. But soon as I was like slowing down and I'm stopping because I'm looking for the street, a cop jumped right behind me. And I was on the phone with the person that I'm trying to find residence, and I'm like, man, the police done got behind me. So I'm thinking this is gonna be nothing, right? So as I pull over, I'm in Hollandale, I know where I'm at. I'm not in uniform because I wear unmarked, I'm in an unmarked car and I don't wear a uniform, but it was business. So the officer is coming up, and I know my tints are very dark, but he's easing up to my car, and he had his hand on his gun, and he was like very stern with me. And so I'm telling him, like, well, first of all, I'm a law enforcement officer. You know, this is my unmarked vehicle. And he said, I ran your tag, and your tag doesn't come back nothing. How do I know it's not stolen? You know, I said, well, if you've been more than a day on the job, I just told you that, you know, if you want to see my credentials, I will give you my credentials. But this is an unmarked car. I'm just, you know, and I'm looking at his name badge, so I'm starting to call him, you know, by his last name, because that's what we do as law enforcement officers. But he got so agitated with me that he didn't even ask for my, you know, to get my credentials. He just said, just go ahead. You know, and I was just so upset, because I'm like, the only reason why you pulled me over is because my tints were dark and you thought you had something good, you know. But at the end of the day, like I told him, I said, what was your probable cause for running my tag? And he said, I don't have to have probable cause for running your tag. I said, yes, you do. Back in the day, we didn't. You know, you could sit at the corner store, you know, in the hood and just run tags and be like, okay, you know, now I'm going to run the driver and see if the driver got license. As soon as they come out of the store and they get in the car, you pull them over. It's an easy arrest, you know. But at the end of the day, now you can't do that. You know, so I'm like, there was no reason, because he could not even articulate to me why he stopped me, other than, you know, my tag didn't come back to anything, which, you know, which upset me. So I called my boss and I said, hey, I just got stopped, and I gave him a piece of my mind, so I'm just letting you know what the situation was. He said, no, you should have. You know, because anytime you run a tag, if it comes back with a hit, or you work with an agency, it hits back to the agency that you ran the tag. So I didn't want them thinking that I was doing something I had no business doing, but that he simply ran my tag because he couldn't see who I was initially until I let the window down, but it was a Chevy. It had dark tinted windows, and I'm in Hollandale. And I got upset about that. But like I said, a lot of times, you know, you're already thinking, I'm fueling off the energy you're going to give me. Now, you're respectable to me, I'm going to be respectable to you. But, you know, sometimes it's just like my mom taught me. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to see how you treat me. Because, like I said, as a law enforcement officer, that's the best weapon we have. You have to report that stuff to the agency and let them know, listen, I was stopped. Now they have cameras. You know, pull the camera. Have them pull the camera and say, he talked to me disrespectfully, he called me a boy, or whatever the situation was. But if you're hostile initially, you never get that chance, you know, because now you're arrested, the situation has escalated, all out of control, and now I'm a suspect, you know, instead of a complainant. So sometimes you let them do their thing. If you're going to be rude and you're going to be disrespectful and you see they have a body cam on, sir, I just need your ID and your name, and I'm going straight to your department when I leave here. And I want to know who your supervisor is. We have to take on things a different type of way. You know, a lot of times you call IA and you can even tell them, I want to know how many times this guy has gotten complaints for this same thing, stopping people for no reason. You know, I want to pull his you know, traffic citations to see how many times he stopped people and said that they were going 50 miles over the same, you know, at the same stop sign, because it could be that they are profiling you. But at the end of the day, if you're willing to just get all emotional on scene, you never even get to that point. You know, it's important that we, you know, you use your brain. You went to school, you know what I mean? You're educated. We see stuff on the media all the time. But the right thing to do is make a complaint, file a complaint with Internal Affairs, and that way when, like Breonna Taylor and these things happen, they say how many complaints he had, how many times he shot somebody. All those things are logged. But if you don't ever make a complaint and y'all just having an argument on the side of the road, guess what? When he drive off, the situation is over with, because he ain't going to tell on himself.
I have a question for you. When can we get people like you to go out and let people know that? Because there's a lot of individuals that are afraid to go and report because they don't think anything is going to happen. But hearing you say this, there's a lot of people that don't know that. So how can we get people in your position or, you know, in that field to go out and say, hey, this is the thing to do?
You can always, most police agencies have community policing, and those are the officers that involve, like normally if they have a back to school event or they have a national night out, things of that nature, and those are the officers that you could probably ask those things to. You can always call me. But it's important, I'm telling you, those conversations are so necessary, because like a lot of times people inbox me or they'll into a conversation on social media. And I'll say, listen, first of all, it's against policy to, say certain things on social media. But if you inbox me or you want to have lunch about a conversation about something that happened in Missouri, no matter where it is, Eric Gardner case, anything, we can have an intelligent conversation, but I'm not going to go back and forth, with you, because a lot of officers are scared to have that conversation. A lot of officers get fired for having that conversation. So if you're willing to have a conversation with me, or you have a city that, you live in and you want to know, like, who can I reach out to, you can give me the information. I'll be happy to find somebody for you.
Yes, come on, applaud. So I do have some questions, but we are moving our time. The timer's not up there, but our time is moving really fast. I want to make sure we cover a couple more topics that we have. But I want to say this, Erica, thank you for saying what you said about what we should do. Yes, it does matter how we react, but sometimes you do all the right things and stuff, but it's not the norm. And I think that's what we have to pay attention to. Adding fuel to the fire is to respond in a negative manner. I agree with you. I have definitely been on the other side. I've been pulled before for no reason. I've been followed in the store for no reason. All of those things simply because I'm black. I don't look suspicious. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not lurking in between the clothes. But I have endured some of those that treatment, and it doesn't make me feel good. And that's what I want to bring out. Whatever reason you get pulled or you get mistreated because you're black, they put you at a table by the kitchen, or they tell you they don't have any more seating and somebody comes behind you, or you've been waiting and they seat 3 people who came after you before you. I mean, come on, let's talk about the real issues, because you're black and they don't expect for you to say anything. And so then if you do say something, you're the angry black woman, here it comes, you're being aggressive or assertive. So I think you really have to make a decision. How am I going to deal with this? Is it I'm not going to show my behind because that's what you want me to do. You want me to cut up so you can just continue with the stereotypes, but what can I do to get what rightfully belongs to me? And this changes what happens with every other black person that comes after me. That's the way I address situations. I don't want you to treat me like that. I don't want you to treat any person of color like that. I don't want you to demean anybody. So I don't want to make it just about me. I am that person that will call the department. I'm that person that will write a letter, because I believe, and this is my quote, you can email me, is that those people don't understand nothing that's not in writing. That's how I feel about it. So me arguing, going back and forth, and then if you don't have the authority to make a decision, I'm not going to talk to you about it anyway. Why am I going to argue with you? I'm like, you on the street, you can't change anything. I need the person sitting behind that desk. So we have to really be aware and be cognizant of what are we going to lose at the end of the day. What is it going to cost us? Are y'all getting this?
Absolutely.
Do you make sense? Okay. I think I saw, were you trying to get my attention? Okay. All right. Go on. I am going to get some questions, but I want to cover, we have 2 more topics we got to cover, business and the workplace. I want to talk about that a few minutes, because it kind of came up. Cassandra mentioned this earlier about the wage gap. So I want to talk about the wage gap with black women. And so nearly 1/4 of the nation's black women, 24.6%, live in poverty. And as I began to research those numbers, I was blown away how many of us are in the workforce, but how many of us are in poverty, but we're in the workforce. And the numbers just, they were crazy, y'all. So I found that even though 178% raise of black businesses between 2002 and 2012, black women, but they only produced $27,000 per year. So the point I'm trying to make, let me slow down. With the percentage of black women and 24% of them living in poverty, 178% change in business ownership in 2012, still at the lower end of the totem pole, and that the most they've made within that period is around $27,000. So to have 178% change in business ownership and still be poor, basically, that blew my mind. We're doing something wrong. So is it that we don't understand business practices? I'm gonna put it out here. Or is it that we don't support our own businesses?
We don't support our own businesses. We think that because it's our homegirl, there has to be a massive discount. She has to give, and we get angry when we don't. And I have many friends that are doing so much. And I think about the fact that if I don't support them, who will? I'm not asking them for a discount, because if it's a vision, if I'm their sister girl, home, or whatever, I'm there to support at price. They offer sometimes, I'm still, no, at price. And as I'm riding here with my prayer partner, our church, like through COVID, because people are trying to survive, there's like 7 or 8 people that they're selling this, they're doing that. So I was going down the list. I was like, ooh, Willette, I forgot to get something from Pam. You know, because that's what you do. You don't know what's going on. And if you have to ask for a discount, how are you going to see the person be successful? And your goal should want the person to be successful, because that's money coming back into your neighborhood, your community. So why try to nickel and dime? So that's the thing. I think that with that, we don't support each other as we should. We are mostly like sitting back, and I hate to say this, to watch us fail instead of going out in full support. I think that's where we get it twisted.
Wow. All right. So I agree that we don't support. I'm a business owner. I actually have a couple of businesses. And sadly, the majority of my clientele are non-Black. And that's the way it is. But on that same sense, my communications company, my husband and I have together, when we walk in and they see, because you can't tell by our name, it's Kristen, but when automatically we have to prove that we deserve a seat at the table. Now, what we do is very different. It's communications, and we are the people that build systems in airports, and you don't see a lot of people like us. So just getting through that first layer of why you here. We just had a project in Tampa a couple weeks ago, and we had our staff there working, and my husband really had to get with some of them because they were treating them like, who are y'all? They had credentials from the airport that said who they were, and they still were treated like they didn't belong there. Now, we're here to help you. You're the one who radios don't work here, and if emergency happened, you can't communicate, you need us. But they treated us like they were doing us a favor. And that's the truth. And so as a Black-owned company, we deal with, a lot of stuff. Yeah, we don't get support from our own sometimes, but even the other people, if they don't have to use you, they won't. Simply because they think you don't deserve to be there. That's my truth. I am unmuted.
I agree. I read something. I'm sorry, Eric. I read something that said that we need to go from being the line in that percentage of people that should be in that business. Because when you think about nationally, in order to, like when the person was building the wall, there's a certain amount of businesses that have to be a minority business. They're written in that line. So we have to go beyond being in that line and being present. So I can understand when you said the people looking at you, because coming from a southern state, people don't expect you to be a business owner, or they don't expect you to be anything else besides, you can do it, you can be a teacher, but they're still looking at Black women as being housekeepers, cleaning rooms, ironing, that kind of thing, because I still have family members that work on a plantation. still work on plantations.
Wait, what?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
Still iron for Miss So-and-so. Live on plantations. Plantations didn't go out the window in
I knew that.
in slavery in the 60s. South Carolina still has plantations. They still have plantations. And I still have family members that live on a plantation and work for people in the plantation. Now, they're not slaves, but they're still living in that mentality of, I have to go iron for Miss So-and-so. So going back to, I think sometimes they look at us as being only that percentage. The only reason why you're here is because you were in that percentage that I had to hire you. So I think that's in places, and even Tampa, I think sometimes they look at us because they're still stuck in old time.
I also think that's where they perceive you to be as threatening, you know? Like you said, they treated you guys a certain way even though you had the credentials. So now when you go to different events and you're hired for something and you go there, or you're asked to speak somewhere, or you know, you're going to this big meeting because you have a seat at the table, that's where that chip comes from. Because when people continuously treat you like you are not supposed to have a seat at the table, you automatically come in with, what we gonna do today? You know? And it may not be so much that you're rude or you're disrespectful to the people that you're hired for, or you know, you're having a presentation with, but it's just the fact that you've been told so many times that you don't deserve to be here, that you just automatically have that kind of edge. You know, like, okay, what are they gonna say to piss me off today? You know, because a lot of times, you know, like I said with the FBI, I'm the only black in the room, right? So I'm okay, I want to make sure my hair looks a certain type of way, and if I have long braids, I will take my braids out. Literally, I don't care if I pay $200. If they say, hey, you got a meeting on Monday at the FBI building in Miramar, I'm taking them out. I'm putting my hair in a bun. I'm not wearing big earrings, and it's not so much as how they look at me. I just want them to know that I know how to be professional. I know how to carry myself, you know, because sometimes they look at, like, they actually wait for you to come in the room, you know, because they want to see what you're looking like today. You know, they want to see if you're going to have blonde hair or if you're going to be, you know, doing something all outside of what the norm is, because they still wear gray suits, black suits, tan suits, camisoles, closed-toe heels, you know, so they looking for you to be outside the norm. So sometimes you have to shock them. I know how to act. You know, I know how to, you know, look professional, but, you know, it's hurtful when, like you said, I have the credentials to be here and you still come at me a certain type of way. So that, to me, that's where that edge sometimes come from, and people feel like, you know, you're aggressive or you're angry or whatever. It's like, no, I'm not angry. I'm just tired of the same thing.
You're telling the truth. You're right, because we do have to do that self-talk. We do. We're like, okay, here goes. Okay. Because you don't know. Yeah, you don't know what you're going to get. And yes, every culture has requirements. So if the culture is blue suits, navy, black, whatever, then you do the culture. You don't roll up in there with your, you know, sister girl, whatever, my unmute t-shirt. Right. Tell me I wear. Of course we can do that. So that's not our issue. But just being able to deal with the constant question of who you are and why you're here, it does annoy you. Right. It does. And so you have to put yourself in check so that you don't react. So let's move a little further. With that same flow of business, I looked up Fortune 500 companies because I wanted to know how many women were CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And my heart broke because I was hoping it was 3. I was hoping it was 3. But it's actually 1.5. So one was Xerox's Ursula Burns, who stepped down in 2016, and the second half was Mary Winston, who was the interim, that's why she's a half, CEO of Bed Bath & Beyond for 6 months in 2019. That's it. Of the Fortune 500 companies, there are 37 female CEOs. I just gave you the people of color. That within itself told me how society values black women's leadership. They don't have to say, when you look at the numbers and you pay attention to what's really out there, you can put whatever you want to put on media, The numbers tell the real story. That's very disheartening. Yes, we can have our own businesses, but we can run yours too. And so some of us are not supposed to be entrepreneurs. Our job is to help your business become successful. But if they don't ever give you the chance to get in the door because all they see is your color, because when you do have those meetings, you can't come in there looking like LaQuisha, I'm just telling the truth. You can be you, but you got to be able to be versatile. I'm versatile. There's so many different, I'm also a real estate agent. So whatever I got to be, I switch, and that's the person, that's what I'm dealing with right then. We have to be able to do that. That's right. And so sometimes people will see you on social media, I didn't know you were a pastor. You weren't supposed to.
But you also have to be able to know the difference, know when to do that, because sometimes we feel like, I know a lot of people's like, well, why would you take your braids out? Why you're not comfortable in, who you are. Oh. It's because that's what I needed to do, right. Because I want to be respected for who I am and not what I look like, because anybody can have fashion. Anybody can come in and have a wow effect. But at the end of the day, you want them to see you for your intellect, right. And what you bring to the table. Yeah. So a lot of times you have to know the difference when you need to dummy down and, do something different.
And then I think once you get in the door and you establish that, then I think you help them recognize right. that this is a part of my culture. This is not me. Right. So then I can bring my braids and I'll help you get yours braided too, right. if you want yours braided. But you got to get your foot in the door first. Right. Get past the judgment, then we can move forward, and then they'll see more people like us. All right?
Because then you're intriguing to them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And when you get in the door, mentor and get other people right. inside the building with you.
Yeah. Black women earn 61 cents for every dollar compared to white men. That amounts to $23,653 less per year. Let that soak. 61 cents less. There's a term called occupational segregation, and I want to drop that on us right quick. It means that while we are diverse and we move in our jobs are concentrated in lower pay and limited mobility. So women of color, yes, you move jobs, but you don't move up. And so that's called segregation. They said it that way to make you think that you are progressing because you're moving, but you're not really moving upward. Okay? So lastly, let's go to women in leadership and politics. That's the thing we want to talk about. Now, I got to start with this quote. I absolutely love her. If you don't know who she is, she's the first elected to Congress in 1968. The first presidential black woman to run for president, okay? So her quote, I absolutely love it. If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. That right there, oh, I should have got some applause for that. Absolutely, bring a folding chair. So I had the privilege of watching a little video of Shirley Chisholm, and she was giving an interview, and she talked about when she was in Congress and how the tables for lunch were segregated. Now, this lady's in Congress, and so she wound up sitting at a table that apparently was not her table, and so he said to her, and she said, just looked at it with his little southern drawl, and so he told her she was at the wrong table. And so she was like, really? Well, tomorrow I'll make that adjustment. But in other words, right now, today, so he just stood there. So she said, I know you're hungry. You watched your video. So she said, there's a table right there because I know you're ready to eat. And she said he laughed and went on to the table and sat down to eat. And so I thought about bring your folding chair. It doesn't matter if I'm pulled all the way up, if I'm in the leather chair, I'm going to get to the table. And I think we have to get a mindset first, let me in the door. Because if I get in the door, I'll prove that I deserve to be there. Right. So you're not doing me a favor, but we have to get past that. So when we talk about politics, we see a whole slew now, according to media, of black women in politics. Have y'all been paying attention? You've been seeing the black mayors. Come on now. They're putting their faces out. Stacey Abrams ran for governor. So they're putting their faces out to make us feel like, hey, we're making some progress. And we are making some progress. But we're not quite making enough progress. I wanted to say black women vote at comparatively higher rates and had a higher voting rate than all other groups of men and women in the last 2 presidential elections. So we're voting. But we remain underrepresented at every level of the federal and state political office. Is this because we don't run for office or we don't vote for our people?
I think we do vote for our people, and I think we do run, but we have, one of the things I talked about with some of my friends is that, and I know some other people may be watching, is that when we have these political parties and the money that they need to have to run, we need to support them because they're having their little family dinners and their parties. They are campaigning. And in rural towns like where I grew up, they run the state. They have old plantation money and they run the state. It's not that we don't run. I think that we don't have the backing and we don't strategize and start early. Because if we look at it, black women vote. Yeah. We do vote. Yeah, but I think when it comes to the financial piece and the strategies and the strategizing, we're not doing that early enough. And we're not getting the backing in certain areas. I read where one of the ladies, she was like the youngest lady in the house, I think she is, and she was like a nurse or something like that. She had other people from other states pouring into her campaign in order to push her to her seat. I think that we do vote, but I don't think we don't strategize and we don't get the other people from other places to back us financially.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of the things that I read, that our numbers would be greater for people running. Of course, we see more of an abundance now over the past 5 years. Prior to that, very little. So as a matter of fact, there have only been 2 black women elected to the U.S. Senate in the history of our country. The first was Carol Braun, who was the representative from Illinois from 93 to 99, and the second you all know as Kamala Harris. Those are the only 2 black women that have been elected to the Senate. So that's a problem. Yes, we are moving in that direction, but you hit the nail on the head. It is finances. Said often people of color don't get behind those that are running, so the candidates fizzle out because you have to have money, y'all. I need y'all to know you have to have money to campaign.
Or it's so many of them running in that one particular area that the vote is split.
Yeah,
because that's the same thing that happened with the sheriff. So sometimes when you're not getting the votes, you're not getting the money, you're not getting the backing, sometimes you should bow out early to give the other person a better chance at winning. So like I said, even with the sheriff, we saw that it was so many people running, and a lot of good candidates didn't make it because of the fact that it was just too many people. Yeah. So sometimes if it's 2 or 3, women running, sometimes you just have to take that self-reflection and say, okay, well, me getting 5% of the votes or 10% of the votes ain't gonna make a difference. We're in the last leg of this. Yeah. Just bow out gracefully and support the next woman, and allow them to get an opportunity to actually win this thing. So I think we need to get behind each other and not, be so divided, and maybe that will help.
That's an excellent point. That comes from not having a community agenda. When you don't have a community agenda, then of course you're going to be split because everybody thinks they have the answer. But when we have partnerships early on and you know what somebody's agenda, you can get behind them and say, okay, you know what, we're going to push you because right now to move to this, you get in office, then you can create some other avenues because that's what the other people do.
Yes, they do that, and it's not necessarily a big meeting. It can be dinner pods We going to so-and-so house this weekend, or we going to the cabin, or we going to the river, and that's how they strategize.
Yeah.
And they get the money and the backing. But I also like your point of knowing when to bow out and getting with the other person so that we can collectively, we can beat the other person.
It goes to pulling each other up, like you said. Yeah. Go out, and then you make support, and then like pull up, and then reach back. Yeah. When it's my time, then I go, and then we continue that process. It goes to that.
Yeah, we're stronger together. And if you can remember that, and we're all moving toward the same cause. And this is not, and I don't want to rub anybody the wrong way. This is not even a black thing. This is a people thing. Right. And so if you got a cause and we're moving in that direction and we're all in the same boat, then we're going in the same direction. When you don't have that, then yes, we're going to be all over everywhere, and everybody's going to feel that their agenda is more important than the other, and then you don't get anything done. And you're right. Then you get 5%, you get 10%, and what good did it do? You spend all those resources knowing, and this is my problem, you already know that you don't have a chance, right. And you will spend all that, the little money that you do have in resource and effort, knowing that you could have put that with somebody else to be successful. I think that's selfish. Yeah. You know, I do. But that's an issue that the agenda has to be bigger than just us. And we have to think we want movement as a community, as a people of color, that we want to bring forth and put us in a position that we can have some real equity here. Okay?
And just like you said, it's a people issue. When you're voting in your communities for these commissioners and these representatives, know what they have done prior to running. Yes. That's very important. Just because they look like me doesn't mean they're going to necessarily do more for you than somebody that does not look like you. True. So it's important to know, what have you done these past 5 years before you ran? Yeah. You know, and if you can't tell me anything other than you've been, you know, a teacher for 25 years or you've been a law enforcement officer for 30 years, then you may not be the candidate to go for. But you need to know what these people have done to help the community before running for those positions. That's Absolutely. So important.
Absolutely. So if you have not realized by now, please vote. If you have not, if you didn't understand anything else that we said today, it is important to vote. Your voice needs to be heard, okay? So we are down to our questions. I want to answer these questions. So if we have some more, please bring them in. We do have a question from the floor. I got somebody wanting to ask a question. If you still want to come up, please come up, because we're doing our questions now. Is it Tish? Yeah, come on, sweetie. Answer. Come on up. Y'all don't mind if she comes.
Hello. So we often hear the term that black women are unprotected. So who do you think that role or their responsibility should fall upon to protect black women?
Ourselves first. I get it, you know, I'm a married woman, so you would say your husband, but I'm thinking when you're saying protected, I'm thinking about my whole being, my mental being, my spiritual being, my body, my temple, my everything. And I have to put that on me, because nobody can take care or protect me like me. He can help me in those areas, but me and my relationship with God is what's going to keep me protected all the way around. So that's my opinion on that.
Anybody else want to respond to Tish?
I agree with me, protecting myself first, but I also think if we learn to protect each other, we can come second. Because after we protect ourselves, we know how to protect ourselves, we can also protect each other, reach out and touch each other.
I also think, first, me, obviously, I'm a law enforcement officer, so I think that you should have a weapon. You know, there are self-defense classes for women that you can take. But also, let me just share this little story about, I have an office in Lauderdale Lakes, and so I was looking out my window and I saw this guy, young black male, handling this young black female roughly, not necessarily hitting on her just yet, but it just didn't look quite right. So I stood there on the inside of my office and I watched, and I called the male officer that works there, and I'm like, I don't think she want to be handled like that. You know, I think this guy's trying to start something with this girl. He say, well, she's smiling and she laughing. I was like, yeah, but I'm a woman and it's hot outside. Ain't nobody gonna want nobody. arm all around your neck and things like that. And so he said, well, if she ain't saying nothing, then we ain't getting involved, So he went to the restroom, and I just stood there because I just knew something wasn't right. And the more he got more and more aggressive to the point where he started hitting on the girl. Now, just maybe 3 parking spot spaces down from her was like 6 guys, black males, young guys, and I'm thinking like, well, y'all outside, I'm inside. I can't hear what's going on, and y'all within feet of this lady. Like, why y'all won't step in and say, hey, man, don't put your hands on that girl like that, because she looked like she couldn't have been no more than 20 years old, and he couldn't have probably been no more than about 24 years old. But they let it go on. I literally had to go to my office, get my gun out my safe, walk outside with my partner who then came from the bathroom, and I say, if you don't stop putting your hands on that girl, I promise you going to jail today. And so he actually had some back and forth, because like I say, I don't wear a uniform. We both had plain clothes on. So his initial thing was like, who are you and why are you approaching me like that? But that's just in me to be like, especially when I see somebody putting their hands on a woman, to be aggressive with you, because now I'm trying to protect her, even if she don't know to protect herself, or to even say she's a victim, And so I spoke to her. I said, let me speak to you, away from him. And I said, do you want to ride home, or you want me to, make a report? What do you want to do? And she literally was like, I'm fine. Like, it's okay. It was okay that this guy was putting her hands on. She literally got back in the car with him, and they sped out of the parking lot, and they drove off. I took the tag number down and made a report and everything. But I then went and addressed the 6 dudes that was standing like 3 parking spaces over, because I'm pissed off, I'm like, that could be your daughter. Why would you not step in and say, hey, don't put your hands on that girl like that? And that may have been all it took for him to leave her alone, but they was like, man, we don't get involved. People crazy these days. And that was their excuse for not stepping in. You don't know what somebody have, and people crazy these days. And I'm like, wow, what if that was my daughter? Or what was that, my niece that this guy was manhandling? And, like I said, at some point he really actually started, putting his hands on her. But it was just the fact that they thought that that was like not their business. Back in the day, that guy would have been all kind of knots upside his head. But they were like, listen, people crazy now. And I just mind my own business. And I was like, wow, and I gave him a piece of my mind. But at the end of the day, we have to protect ourselves, and you have to know when you're being abused and know when you're being a victim, so that you say something and you get out of that situation. But at the end of the day, black men also need to protect black women, or women in general. It's not okay to say I'm minding my own business. You ain't called the police. You could at least call the police. Y'all stood there and literally said, it's not our business because people are crazy. And it's 6 of y'all. And it took a woman to come outside her office, even though I was packing, to say, like, you put your hands on that lady again, it's going to be a problem. But for you guys to just sit there and allow that to happen just bothered it just bothered me to my spirit, that I actually had to have some words with them. But like I said, it's our job to protect ourselves, but also these people, black people need to know, like, we need to protect ourselves, each other. Black men need to protect black men. Black men need to protect black women, because we're going to always stand up for our black men, but they need to do the same for us.
All right.
Wow.
Thank
So
you.
lastly, I want to add, Tish, I also think that there needs to be legislation. There needs to be change in policies, many of the things that we discussed today that affect black women specifically, not just do stuff across the board. There needs to be organizations that work for cause for black women, so that we are not the lowest one on the totem pole. So that, I think that's what it's going to take to protect us.
Thank you.
All right, as we're coming down to the wire, the question with, we got another question that kind of tied to what you just said, Erica. They said, I think the black woman is one of the strongest beings on the planet, but she allows herself to be taken advantage of in a lot of instances. What are some steps to keep her crown and realizing her self-worth? That's what you just said. When you mentioned the young lady said, I'm okay, and got in the car with the guy who was obviously abusing her. And maybe that's the dilemma that the other guys felt, that maybe some of them did intervene and they get that same, I'm good, why are you in the way? I know even with domestic issues that sometimes people try to go in to help and they wind up losing their lives because the other person, either they both jump on them or, so it's hard. but that still shouldn't be a reason for not speaking up, because you do have to protect. But to answer his question, does anybody want to answer that? He says, how do you help her to recognize her own self-worth and hold on to her crown?
I think affirmation, just continuously telling her that, because I mentor so many people, so many broken people. Sometimes I be broken myself, but I mentor so many people, and I always try to leave them with encouragement. I don't care what the story they tell me, what they went through. I always say, you stronger than that. You better than that. You know, you can leave him if you wanted to. You just got to make your mind up. Because, like, I just had a young lady text me last night, and she said, you know, she lost her mother recently, and she was like, I just can't do this. I'm a new mother. I'm so stressed out. I'm sad, you know, and all these things. And I was telling her, I said, you got to pray that off of you. You know, that's a spirit that has gotten on you. You have to pray that off of you, but not only pray it off of you and leave it there. You know, because I know when I was going through some things, the pastor literally stood up and he said, you keep coming to the altar, you keep praying about this situation, but when you leave the altar, you take it right back with you. You know, when you get in your car, you right back texting, doing the same thing you just brought to the altar. So a lot of times you have to realize when you prayed about something and you told God, I'm going to turn it loose, that you have to do just that. You know, turn it loose and move on. God will bless you with greater, you know. So like I said, with this particular young lady, I just keep telling her that you better than this. You know, you're stronger than this. And eventually she will believe that, you know, if you just keep giving her tools to use to come out of that situation.
Oh, go ahead.
I also want to add to that is that, you know, sometimes as women, we get to an age where we're just now acknowledging that, or it was never told to us. I think it starts when they are younger. And if you continue, what's the one that if you you raise them up as a child, they won't go back, don't depart, whatever.
Train up a child.
Train up a child. And I think if you instill that earlier on, those things will come back to their memory that, hey, I am strong enough to do this. I don't have to take this. Develop it earlier, and then when it comes to that point, it's almost like a reminder. It's no longer, I have to teach you this at 45.
Right.
You know, I taught you this at 4. This is how you carry yourself. This is what you do. You're strong. You're this. You're that. You're powerful. You do that earlier on. So now, when they're older, it's just a reminder.
And don't be afraid to, like, you know, ask for help. Don't be afraid when you're like this young lady that texts me. If you feeling depressed and you need some energy from somewhere else, or you need some help, I need you to get this baby because I'm about to lose my mind. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because that's when you go into a deeper depression. You know. So I think being able to recognize I'm in a situation, you know, and if I don't get some help, I'm going to lose it. Or if I don't get some help, I'm going to be homeless. Whatever your situation may be, I think being able to recognize it for yourself and reaching out to people that you trust, that's not going to put your business all on social media, but that you can trust to do the right thing, you know, with your life.
You do need to reach out, and I think as African American women, we've been stunned with that because we get burnt, because we don't know how to trust, because we do reach out, we do talk, we do tell, and then somebody tells somebody. But I've learned in that I don't really care what they tell, because I have a tight-knit set of friends. So I don't mind if long as it doesn't go outside of my friendship circle, which I know that's how we go, because we're all trying to figure out how to help solve this issue for Sean. So I don't mind that. It's when it becomes the blatant gossiping. And then with the young lady, I think we have to, having a dad, like you accept the treatment of a man from the treatment that you see that your dad has imparted. And if your dad in your household has taught you that you are beautiful, you are a queen, this is how he treats his wife, then that's how you expect. It's the expectation. That's how you expect to be treated. So you go out with that mentality, and nobody can treat you any different. So when they go to start raising a voice, it's no raised voice. I can't do that, you know, and let alone get close enough to think you getting ready to put a hand on, because that's not tolerated, because that's not how I was raised. And then when you have those mothers and the grandmother to impart that too, it's a different mindset, you know. But you got to take care of yourself first, and, you know, don't depend on anybody else for that.
All right, so that brings us to the end Oh my, was this a great conversation?